Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. It's a very sweet portrait. A woman wearing a nice white blouse, short cut hair, looking right at the camera. What's nice is that I don't know if the camera is a flash or if it's just a reflection of the light in the room, but there's a perfect highlight right in the middle of her iris. She has not I wouldn't call it an authentic smile. I think it's a posed smile. It's not like smiling because of happiness. It's smiling because, oh, here's an image. I'm smiling for the camera or for the viewer. Her hair looks great. She's inside a room. Could be there's wood background. I dare say, I don't know. Is that a bathroom selfie? I don't know. I can't tell. So what's this image?
If it's the one that I'm thinking you're describing, it's a picture of my wife, I believe.
Yeah. Okay, so the title says "My Wife, Who I Lost to Cancer in February 2021." Well,
Okay, so
dude, my sincere condolences. I know it must be so tough. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So it was a selfie that she took. We actually, excuse me, we actually exchanged selfies.
Okay.
I happened to be doing some work, and I was in Dubai at the time, and so in order for us, because we'd been apart for probably about a week at that stage, and so for us to kind of deal with the separation part, we said, well, let's do a selfie at that particular time point and send it to each other. And so that's
sweet.
That particular picture is one that she took as she was either coming home from or getting ready to go to work.
Wow.
And then I sent one where I think I was sitting at a table in my hotel room, and we did it that way. So and it's ironic that picture is the one that we used for her celebration. We did a celebration of life, and that was the picture that we used for that event as well. It became sort of one of the most popular pictures out of all the ones that we had of Deborah that they sort of gravitated towards it because it was a picture that just kind of drew you in.
Right. Interesting what happens in my thinking as well when, you're right. It's a very sweet photo. And also within the frame of this conversation, it's a bittersweet photo. And then as you're describing, then when you say Deborah, it's like, oh, wait a second. Then it becomes so much more personal, right? And so why the choice of the photo of celebrating Deborah within this podcast, within your sharing with the world?
Because she's part of my story. She had to go through some very tough times when I was not the greatest person to be living with because of me dealing with post-traumatic stress and not having a mechanism to be able to release all that negative energy and stuff like that. My answer was to turn to a bottle of Scotch whiskey, that was going to solve all the problems. And of course, as a result of that, there was mental abuse, verbal abuse that she ended up having to listen to and be involved in. So that, there were all of those things. And we were together for almost 44 years.
Wow.
And, everything that I did, I shared with her. And so which is why the picture has a significant meaning to me. And I only hope that, through us having this conversation, that your listeners are they can sort of get that sense and they get to know Deborah as I know her.
So I've had a few people talk about grief post-traumatic stress, mental health, and the reflex to go to alcohol isn't so strange, because if you think, like, when you go to see a doctor, sometimes their reflex is, okay, they'll prescribe Xanax. And what Xanax is? A depressant. And alcohol does that same thing. At the end of the day, you just want something to lower, cut, decrease the noise, right? So talk about what does post-traumatic stress manifest like for you? Because everybody, it's like you could put two people will be in the same event, right? And it would seem that it's like, you see the same accident, you're participating in the same traumatic crisis moment, but two people will interpret it very differently and it'll manifest very differently. So in terms of your own PTSD, I don't even know where you work. I don't, like, what city you're working in, what kind of job you were doing. Why don't you make that real for a listener?
So when the work that I was doing, which precipitated the post traumatic stress, was I was a uniformed police officer, and I was working in a lot of very small communities where, in some cases, I was either the only police officer or I was one of two police officers in that community. And so every any call for a police officer,
Mm,
it was me.
yeah.
And so I would end up having to go. And, as a result of that, I got to deal with some situations that hopefully most people would never have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
One of the examples was a young lad that had made the adult men's hockey team in the community, and we were going to head down the highway and play the other community a game of hockey in the middle of winter. And he was happy. He was 16 years of age, and he made the male adult men's team, and he was so proud of himself, as we were of him as well. Only for him to go home and find his parents had been drinking for far too long.
Mm,
And of course, they were not in a position for him to be able to share his good news and great fortune, with them. And as a result of that, he went into a room in the trailer they lived in and hauled out a rifle and took his own life.
oh
And
man.
I ended up being the one police officer that had to go and
Oh,
investigate that. And I ended up also having to transport him to the closest place where there was a morgue, which
yeah.
was 8 hours
Holy
away
shit.
by vehicle in the middle of winter.
Wow.
And so I still have certain things trigger me, and I still go back to, number one, having to go and
Yeah.
investigate, and then number two, having to transport him uh, to a place where there was a morgue.
Um. So I had mentioned that I had worked at the Human Rights Commission, and then after that, I moved over to this other organization called the Human Rights Foundation. And the foundation would have, every year they'd have a conference where they'd bring in human rights officers and people from around the world to Montreal to participate in this shared learning whatever event. And one of the consistent things that people, for example, people coming from these very difficult, like Bangladeshi or from Egypt or from very difficult countries where you think, oh, human rights abuses were really huge. They come into Canada and they'd see this like idyllic landscape in the summer, not in the winter. But they're like, how can there be human rights issues
Mm.
in Canada? Canada's amazing. So on the one hand, what they had to realize, or they came to realize, was to a certain extent it's relative. It's like there's the perception of what you see, but there's always stuff in the background that civil society hides or doesn't hide, but deals with well enough, right? Like most people For example, most people who eat meat don't really pay attention to the fact that the cow or the pig, that sentient animal, was killed. Right? It's ultimately it is taking a life, and so most people are kind of hidden by that. And in the same way, that you live your life, and for your in your case, your job as the one lone police officer, you get the call, you go, and then suddenly, like, you're just a person like everybody else, but the social role is that no, 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 you have to go in there, and you have to kind of clean it up for people and make make sense for people, and sort of reset the sort of civil society. So how do you process that road that you've taken at each step, think, okay, well, this is what I want to do. I want to be a police officer. That ends up leading you to these moments that really shake you.
How I process it, it's a matter of looking at it from the aspect of how can I take this and have it be a part of my healing that I'm going through in order to be able to get to a better place overall mental health wise, to be able to do that. The second part for me, and it sort of triggered me to think of something when you were describing how um, the best way for me to, I guess the best way for me to describe it is when it comes to mental health and mental well-being and anxiety and depression and post-traumatic stress and all of those things, a lot of those are not things that we talk about very readily. In fact, when you think about it, mental health and a lot of the offshoots of that are causes for a great deal of concern. In fact, what I describe it as is how mental health is viewed and looked at today is a silent pandemic.
Mm,
Is we don't really spend enough time talking about it, or if we talk about it, we don't really end up with a conclusion as to how we're going to deal with it. And so suicide rates are continuing to increase. The number of people that are struggling with anxiety, depression, and all of those things are continuing to grow, and we're not really doing as much as we could in order to be able to deal with those. And so, what it's we talk about COVID being a pandemic. Well, mental health, mental well-being, post-traumatic stress, all of those things, they're part of what I call a silent pandemic.
mm-hmm,
And if we don't deal with those and 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 have a proper support structure in place, we're we're just heading down a path where we're going to continue to have issues. We're going to continue to have a rising death toll that we're not doing much to combat.
mm-hmm. Well, this is a very heavy conversation for a Saturday morning. um, yeah, like, and by the way, so we're talking about this. In the meantime, on the screen is this photo of Deborah with this very bright, open expression. And then, like, as you're speaking, I kind of realized, like, to be a mentor really is like, mentoring really takes a lot of time, and it really does um, involve a lot of you're basically creating a one-to-one personal relationship. Like, my main client in Hong Kong, we worked together for 15 years, and whether he liked it or not, I sort of think of him as a mentor. So yeah, so while you were speaking, I was thinking to myself that here's a person who's really dedicated so much of his time. You've dedicated so much of your time in service, like giving to other people. And unfortunately, the cost to you has been wounds, I guess, in your own mental health. So, and yet you can't turn off that switch. Like, you're still giving back in a way. Like, you're still very much in service.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think I could turn that switch off.
Mm,
And part of that is because I see. there's still a need.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main thing, and it's in some respects it's a calling that I've been given that I need to continue to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what Deborah would want me to do. She wouldn't want me to walk away from all these people
Sure.
and not try, because that was her nature as well. So so there's that part about it as well.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's move on to the next image. Unless you want to keep talking about this one. You want to move on to the next photo?
Sure, we can move on. Yeah.
Sure. So, is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So, if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.